Call to order the February 2024 meeting of the Special Committee on University Relations at the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our special committee. Thank you for those joining us in the West Committee Room and via Zoom. As a friendly reminder, I'd like to share that today's meeting is not being live streamed. Rather, the Zoom recording will be uploaded to the board's YouTube channel after the meeting for archiving. As a housekeeping reminder, I'd like to note that the West Committee Room has room-wide microphones. So the microphones allow any speaker to be heard in the room and in the Zoom meeting and on the recording. The audio feed will pick up all audio from the room, including conversations that you might have. Given that, please try to limit any side conversations, which include those of us around the table and members of the community who are here in the audience. Additionally, regents and presenters, given that we will not use the room's touch-to-speak microphones that are in front of you, please project when you speak so that your remarks are clear and on the official record. With that, let's move on to our first agenda item. We have presenter Melissa Lopez-Franzen, Executive Director of Government and Community Relations with us. And our first item is a presentation from Ms. Lopez-Franzen, the System-wide Executive Director of Government and Community Relations, with an update on government relations at the university. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Lopez-Franzen as our first presenter. Would you like to get started?
Thank you, Chair Gully, and thank you, members. Thank you, Regent members, for your time. We'll do a quick update of government relations. We've been really busy since I started 5 months ago. It's hard to believe it's been that much time and also all that has been accomplished. But at the same time, we are getting geared up for the legislative session that starts on February 12th, which is next Monday. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being present yesterday at our breakfast with members of the legislature and the Board of Regents. And with that, I'm going to keep giving you some additional updates on our federal relations, because that's another piece that we are working really closely to make sure that we have the capacity and also continue to work with our federal delegation. I was just in DC on Monday, Tuesday of this week and met with each of our offices in the House and the Senate, and was basically introducing or reintroducing our government relations team to various members and their staffers. And it was a really great time to really talk about where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. So it's opening that line of communication with the different federal offices. I was accompanied by our contract lobbying firm, Lewis & Burke, so they were able to make these appointments happen really quickly, and it was great. I got to see a few of our legislative members. It was a busy day at the Hill with voting, so I was able to see Congressman Finstad, Congressman McCollum, and I'm trying to believe, and then Representative Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. So it was great to see them in person, and the rest I met with staffers. So what we're doing at that level, continuing to work with Amy Kircher, who's our interim director of federal relations. She's been working really closely with Lewis & Burke and internally with our different colleges to work on an appropriations book where we're going to be asking the Congress for certain appropriation requests depending on different funding streams. So that work is almost done in terms of getting that final book ready for approval by leadership here. So we are able to move forward and advocate for those dollars coming to Minnesota in terms of research dollars. The other pieces that of legislation that we're watching closely at the federal level is one is NIL, which is name, image, and likeness. That's something that is at the forefront at a lot of colleges and universities across the country, where there are a few bills that have been introduced recently, and we're monitoring them. We're working with our federal delegation to give feedback, and we're working really closely with athletics to be able to provide feedback to make sure that that law, if it moves forward, has some of our recommendations. We also are working with Senator Klobuchar's office, giving technical assistance with the anti-hazing policy that she's working on as well, a bill that's intended to really make our campuses across the country safer. And we're certainly appreciative of her efforts and want to make sure that she also hears of how our campus would be affected in a positive way, giving her the technical assistance that she needs with making that bill work. Let's see, we are also working on a federal strategy. So February 5th was the Capitol Hill visits, 5th and 6th. The other piece that we're working on that I wanted to make sure that the federal delegation knew is our work with the Minnesota MedTech Hub. We're one of 31 finalists across the country where Greater Minnesota MSP is a lead. The University of Minnesota is also working really closely in that package, and we're going to put an application in that could draw in tens of millions of dollars to the state in terms of research opportunities, and the University of Minnesota would be one of those key players in making sure that money is used appropriately for research and for the intent of this Minnesota MedTech Hub, which is economic development for our state. And a lot of legislators might not know that University of Minnesota partners very closely in many opportunities like this with other organizations. In this case, it's a group and a table of many leaders across the state. Medtronic is part of it. Like I mentioned, Greater MSP is the lead, and so many other partners that are working really closely, Medical Alley, to bring those dollars here and work stronger in partnership. I like to say collaboration's the new competition. So that's a perfect example of a federal program where at the state level, we are joining forces to make sure we put our best foot forward and bring those dollars to Minnesota. And I'll pause there because this is more the state level. Any questions on the federal side that you may have at this point? Okay, I'll go into the staffing for our legislative session at the state level, and I'm so pleased and so excited to say we have an A team or the A team for the University of Minnesota. Christine Keogh, I mentioned before, has rejoined our government relations team, as well as Andrew Shelseth. We are so excited to have this team. We also, this was before this slide was done, Adam Hughes is also part of our team. We are the state relations team that's going to be at the Capitol meeting with legislators every day, day in and day out in committee hearings, bringing folks to tours. So this is a team I believe is going to really hit the ground running as Christine comes from the medical school after doing a 6-year stint there. And Andrew is also versed in, I like to say, health and human services language, because that's a big part of what we're going to be doing this year with the academic health. So he also comes with some lobbying experience, contract lobbying experience, as well as from Alina Health. So we're bringing two really key players and who are known players at the Capitol, and people appreciate them. I've gotten so many great compliments. So I think we have a great team to represent our voice at the Capitol. And like I say, we can't do this alone. We have to take partners, and we also need the staff who understand the complexities of the legislative process. So I'm glad to have them here and to have them join our team. What is our state legislative session priorities and how we're going to move forward? Obviously, we have the 3 pieces of the priorities that you all have approved with the Board of Regents supplemental budget at $45 million, the asset preservation, $500 million in bonding. I will stop there to also let you know that we were able to go on a media tour with MnState not that long ago. IP Edinger and myself went to, and Andrew Shelseth, we went to Rochester and Winona and had some media availability with them, with their editorial boards and local press. And it's really to tell the story of how important it is to preserve the assets that we have, why we are asking for $500 million each system. We're not competing. We're saying we need these dollars in both systems. We are really making the case for that, and gave a lot of examples of how this money, it really is to taking care of what we have. It was a really well reception from folks, and we also ended with a lunch with Chair Pulowski in Winona, who is now retiring after 38 years of public service and has been a champion of higher education. On the academic health, there's obviously more coming from yesterday's board meeting, and this is a key priority for us ongoing for the next few years. It's an area where I think our team is uniquely situated to work with partners to make the case of why the academic health system and how the University of Minnesota fits into that statewide and our 6 colleges, health sciences colleges. So we're going to be asking for that $80 million. We're going to be making the case of why it's important to do this now We don't wait for healthcare for a year from now. We have to tackle these issues that are really about Minnesotans' health, and that is why it's urgent. And then the strategy behind that is meeting with legislative leaders, inviting them to campus, to tour campus, to come to see what academic health is, for instance. It's hard to just talk about it without coming into one of our, or the hospital or one of our facilities and really understanding how we collaborate with our different colleges and how our students are really at the forefront of what we do and teaching them, like we were talking about yesterday in the health subcommittee with Penny Wheeler. It was just really a testament how we showcase what we do at the university, how uniquely situated we are, and how we need the state support to continue that on. If we fail, the state fails, so we cannot afford that. We're going to be really reaching out to House and Senate members, again, even in their districts, partnering with Alumni Association and so forth to make sure that they hear from us. We'll be attending committee hearings, legislative meetings, and inviting them to campus as many times. And my goal would be that the 201 members get to come to the U at least once in the next year. It's not going to all happen in one session, but we sure want to make sure that they come and see what we do every day here and find opportunities for events that we can also showcase what we do here. So that in a short summary of this work, but it's ongoing. We've done a lot more in communications, for instance, to make sure that legislators hear directly from us and not from the press. Not to say the press is not important, but I think it's important to give that personal touch when big important decisions are happening here or when something's happening in their districts with our 5 campuses. So that is part of the strategy, to have an open line of communication, to have them reach out to us, and we'll reach out to them as well, and their staff. I think that critically important piece is a lot of these offices have great staff that we also want to make sure that they have visibility and understanding of what we do at the U. So thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez-Franson. Regents, let's turn to discussion. Are there any questions or comments? Regent Canania.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation update. Obviously the legislative breakfast was a great step, and that's something we're bringing back, that did exist before. Beyond that, what are you looking for from us in terms of engagement, obviously visits, but then just in between, how can we help support the efforts? And perhaps more importantly, not hurt the efforts.
Chair Gully and Regent Tanyanya, that's great segue to something I missed completely to mention, which is U of M Day at the Capitol coming up February 22nd. That is just one of the opportunities where we want to showcase Regents. You are all invited to come to committees. We will make sure that we work with the board office so you know when they are, because we will be there. And it's great to see you are all known quantities at the Capitol. You went through a process where you were elected through that process at the Capitol, so they know you, and having your face there is great. We will equip you with the talking points that you need and prep you and brief you. So that is part of the outreach we'll do with the Board of Regents office to ensure that you have your talking points and you're briefed on how we're working together on these subject matters, because I mentioned those 3 priorities, but there's other items that we are working proactively with the legislature that we want you to have visibility to. And sometimes you have a relationship that we might not, or a stronger relationship, and we want to make sure that we have and leverage your relationships with legislators and staff. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Chair Gully. Yeah, it does. And that last point, you were talking about the relationships that we have. I know on a number of occasions I've communicated with you, just letting you know about something that's important to a certain representative that I have a relationship with. Is that helpful? Should I stop texting you? Or is that helpful?
Chair Gully and Regent Kanyaya, it's very helpful, and I welcome, a phone call when you have a question, when sometimes you get asked to be interviewed. I certainly want to work with Chuck's team in public relations to coordinate that, because there's also a different set of talking points for GovRel versus media relations, not because we're doing something uniquely different, but it's different when you're talking to a legislator than when you're talking to media. So we want to make sure you're prepared for that conversation. Keep the conversations coming, and if I don't know the answer, we'll find it for you. We'll work through the Board of Regents office when you have an inquiry as well. So if you can come straight to me, but I'll make sure we loop in the office as well. Thank you.
Regent Farnsworth.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair Gully. I was in queue before U of M Day at the Capitol was mentioned, and that's what I was going to mention. So I think using this public venue to encourage members of the university community to come to U of M Day at the Capitol on Thursday, February 22nd at 10 a.m. on the upper mall of the Capitol. And I think that's really important for folks to show up to and have a show of strength at. And then just, well, thank you for your continued work, and really thought that the tour you were just talking about with Interim President Ettinger and Min State was great. I saw that on Twitter on the day that that was happening, and it was great to see that. And I think those unique opportunities are exactly what we should be capitalizing on. So thank you.
Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Gully, and thank you, Director Lopez Branson. I want to give a shout out to your work at the federal level, and especially that book that gets prepared. Because, and I think it would be worth, I don't remember if it's a physical copy, but maybe to bring it in so people can see how significant that is, because it doesn't just represent the ask, it represents just the tremendous work that we do here and the collaborations that help bring on other votes and are they doing earmarks?
Chair Gully and Regent Davenport, yes, yes on both. We will share that document once it's with the Board of Regents, once it's approved. It's in the draft form, but it's getting really, really close. So when we were meeting with each federal office, they did ask for us, what are your, give us your appropriation ask, but also, yes, they are doing earmarks, and we'll work internally to see what opportunities we have for those. We were told that other universities take advantage of this opportunity more than we do, so we will get our act together, if you will, in terms of taking advantage of those opportunities, especially when the legislators and the Congress folks, our delegations asking for us to do so. We will leverage that and make sure that they have what they need. Thank you. And yes, it is impressive. I've read the book, and I am not a researcher or a PhD, and it was enlightening to see the work that's happening and what those dollars would mean to health, what those dollars would mean to technology, to the environment. And it's amazing work that's happening in the U, and it's just a sliver of what we do.
Thank you.
Regent Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I just wanted to say that the breakfast was excellent and a really good chance to tell our story to legislators, and appreciated that. And I'm glad we're doing more of that sort of thing. But I did, and I'm glad we've got someone working federal issues right now. One thing with the U of M Morris, I'm curious. I don't know if I don't want to call on Chancellor Erickson, but just for future reference, there are two universities, or Fort Lewis College in Colorado and U of M Morris, and then there's Haskell in Kansas, which is fully funded by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. But I'm just curious if there's federal funding out there for schools like Fort Lewis and Morris that have a heavy Native American population. And that's something you don't need to answer now. I'm just curious if that's out there. I think in the past, there have been lobbyists that have kind of volunteered, and I'm guessing Morris has an interest in that sort of thing, to obtain more federal funding. I just Googled Fort Lewis College, and they were getting some fairly large federal grants. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that for future reference.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Gully and Regent Johnson. I am not aware, but I will certainly follow up with the Morris Chancellor, and we'll get you what you need. But also, if there's opportunities, we certainly should evaluate what we can go for, and especially bring them to the attention of some of the members of our delegation who may serve in some committees of jurisdiction that we're able to work with. Notably, obviously, Congresswoman McCollum is in an appropriations committee, so that is an opportunity that we're going to be keen on when it comes to her jurisdiction, but certainly would like to see other opportunities there. So I appreciate that. And the breakfast, I would say for yesterday, that was planned by the Board of Regents office. So I want to give credit for where credit is due. So Krista Overby and your team and everyone working in Brian Steve's for a great event. And we were able to support them with the legislative profile. So you all know who was there. We had about 12 legislators, including some key leadership roles in that breakfast. So it was great to have those conversations and to see that there's interest in learning more. And I did get feedback right there and then about thank you for bringing these back. So it's really worth the effort to take the time to meet with legislators in that forum.
Interim President Ed.
I just wanted to add that there's a regular event that will be happening on Tuesday, the 13th, that the Humphrey School hosts. It's the One Minnesota Conference. It also invites legislators onto campus and is kind of a substantive discussion of some of the issues heading into the session. So multiple events related to the university trying to be
Yes.
prominent in these discussions.
Chair Gully and Interim President Editor, thank you for mentioning that. There's a lot of things like that we host. That one is notable because it's the one thing in the beginning of session that the entire legislature is invited to come and it's actually required. So I've attended them many years and that's something that is unique for us to be hosting. So it's a testament again in the partnership and the role we play to bring legislators together in a bipartisan way at the university campus. So that's something that is great to see. And when there are other opportunities, we'll bring people to campus as well as we see fit and as appropriate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Lopez Branson.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
With that, we will move to our next presenter, Chuck Tombarge, Chief Public Relations Officer and Interim Co-Leader of University Relations. Our second item is an overview of public relations and internal communications with the university with Mr. Tombarge.
Thank you, Chair Colleen. I'll give Rachel just a second there. Thank you. Great. This morning, I'm going to give you a peek into how the university approaches public relations and internal communications across the system. Sometimes within individual teams and sometimes in collaboration across teams. And as you'll see, the U of M has a very distributed structure in this space. In many ways, this is common among our peers and actually happens for very good reasons. But at other times, it does provide some challenges to our work. Regardless, we're focused on constant progress in our work, and I hope to share some of that with you today, starting with the big picture. If you look across higher ed and similarly across the U of M, multiple factors can influence our communication structures. And here are just a number of them. Stakeholders. Research land-grant institutions like ours have countless stakeholder groups they serve, both internal and external. And even within our university, the needs of stakeholders may differ depending on their engagement with us. So while the university may engage all alumni, the College of Liberal Arts, the Morris campus, and the medical school's professional programs will engage with alumni a little bit differently, because those alumni have different needs, different interests, and different relationships with us. Specialization, from college unit or campus goals to the local expertise of faculty and staff and the relationships among them, all of these things guide and influence our communications. And with these two factors in mind, our approaches differ significantly, and so does the volume of our activities. Finally, budget models determine resource availability and instill varied levels of decision-making. All of these factors create PR and internal communications teams across the university systems like ours that look quite different with a variety of priorities. At the U of M, teams report up through various leaders. At Duluth, Crookston, Morris, and Rochester, central PR and internal teams report to their chancellors, with units such as athletics having their own teams, as well as many colleges and units on a larger campus like Duluth. On the Twin Cities campus, more than 40 colleges and units, Gopher Athletics, and some vice presidential and other central units all have teams of varied sizes who report to their local leaders. Meanwhile, our team in the Twin Cities, University Relations, reports to the president. And we also provide services and counsel to our colleagues on the system's campuses and other locations. In addition, marketing and communications leaders on the 4 campuses and in Twin Cities colleges and units have a dotted line to University Relations leadership, though that is not represented on the chart. We work to continue to strengthen those dotted lines wherever we can. At the campus levels, structures and focus areas are catered to the needs and environments surrounding each campus. So you can see that Crookston, Morris, and Rochester have centralized campus teams, while Duluth and the Twin Cities are decentralized. The full-time equivalent resources dedicated solely to PR and internal communications differ as well, as do the most popular communications vehicles we use. Again, each approach is influenced by everything from stakeholders, community expectations and culture, available resources, and other factors. So when we share stories about the university to various audiences, each of our campuses may approach that a bit differently. Some of this communication happens very locally, while other strategies may involve our team or be managed centrally for the entire system. Next, we'll take a look at how that plays out. As I said, some stories about the university are best managed at a very local level because they use that local expertise. So for example, the Crookston team on the story at the left placed a U of M Crookston expert in a Fargo Forum story focused on the ag education needs of Minnesota and the Dakotas. And thanks to the great work of my Morris colleagues, Morris's new program to train addiction treatment specialists was highlighted in MinPost last summer as a solution to critical unmet needs in greater Minnesota. These and other similar stories contribute greatly to campus recognition and by extension, the positive reputation of the university. Other stories benefit from strategic collaboration between campuses and our university relations team. This may occur to maximize our relationships internally or externally, or it may be as simple as tapping the team that has the time to get the work done. Regardless, by working together, we can get better results. For example, Duluth and University Relations partnered to manage media interests in multiple locations in a story about robots developed by Duluth faculty to help dementia patients. The story received broad attention in the Duluth region, but also extended to Twin Cities media and beyond. Similarly, the story you see from the New York Times included collaboration across several U of M offices, including the West Central Research and Outreach Center, the CFANs, the Morris campus team, and counsel from University Relations, as well as community partner involvement. The result was a great story about the university's impact in the Morris area. In still other instances, escalating issues or stories are needed, sometimes to tell a broader university story, and sometimes because a high-profile issue requires consistency in messaging and the university's point of view. You see examples here, including the system-wide internal messaging that was core to our COVID pandemic response, and the recent very positive news about the university becoming the first in the country to achieve the Carnegie classification for engagement on all of our campuses. Overall, our teams consider where we can combine efforts for better results, but also respect the hard work of our teams that is happening in local communities to represent our campuses and the university with specific stakeholders. The dedicated teams that make up university relations, working across public relations, internal communications, and marketing, work hard to build the reputations of the university and the Driven to Discover brand. As you see, as you know, the university's Chief Marketing Officer, Ann Aronson, oversees marketing, and together we currently co-lead university relations located in the Twin Cities. Next, I'd like to take a closer look at the public relations and internal communications teams with you that I am honored to lead, starting with PR. Our PR team collaborates closely with all of the university's campuses, colleges, and units to advance and protect the university's reputation. And as you can see, we do that in a number of ways, from proactive and responsive media relations to managing issues, crisis, and emergency response communications, to strategy development and training, and also supporting university leaders, such as the president and all of you. The PR team is led by Jake Ricker, our Senior Director of Public Relations, who's helping us manage through some other media issues today. He's often with me at board meetings, as well as Andrea Waklowski, our Director of Public Relations, who provides additional support for the board and president and other leaders. We currently have 8 PR professionals total on the team, organized by beats or focus areas to support over 40 Twin Cities campus partners, in addition to the support we provide to the system overall. And in fact, just this week, we hired an additional member of our PR team who will be focused on supporting the work of Ms. Lopez Franzen and her government relations team. Whether university relations or our campus colleagues are leading PR efforts, we tend to take a two-pronged approach to our work. First, we lead by developing strategy, managing issues and crises, telling stories and communicating key messages, and providing counsel. And then we use our unique relationships with media, engagement to find new opportunities, but also internally across our organization to tap the expertise and stories that we have to tell. Our chancellors and their communications leaders on the other campuses are great partners of university relations, and I can't thank them enough for their partnership and honest feedback. But as I've mentioned already, we are better when we do university's PR together. The university is a huge and complex place that requires us to use our unique perspectives, skills, and relationships to be effective. In fact, our communication structure requires us to share responsibility. At a local level, those PR professionals are creating opportunities in local relationships, managing issues day to day, and helping us amplify successes. They also play a critical role in managing high-profile issues at the university, because they are often the first ones to notice that something may go wrong, and it's up to them to raise a red flag about it. Next, let's take a look at internal communications. This team focuses on partnering across the university and doing so in ways that do not replicate or replace important local internal communications. All campuses and other major parts of the university have stakeholder groups, as we discussed, that deserve communications that address their unique needs. Whether an employee in Rochester or Crookston, a Humphrey or law school graduate student, or a user of the university's IT or HR benefits, all of these individual groups receive communications from a variety of internally focused teams. We also know from our own internal research that managers and supervisors are among the university's most trusted messengers. So a lot of internal communication rightly happens at local levels through them. But we also know that in some instances, information must be managed centrally, whether it's a system-wide response to the COVID pandemic or bringing multiple partners together to manage safety communications or information about student mental health resources. That's where our internal communications team does some of its best work. Under the leadership of Christy Wells, our Director of Internal Communications, we have 4 professionals total on the internal team, 2 of whom are focused on safety communications. And this team focuses on 3 areas of work: convening partners across the institution to tell a broader story, cascading central information down into colleges, units, and even the manager level, and providing counsel and best practices across our system. But again, similarly, we must share this work if effective internal communications is to happen at the university. And so we look to those local teams to help communicate stakeholder-specific information, create campus and local leadership messaging, and again, make sure the information is reaching the right people at the right time. As you know, the university is well underway into the first phase of peak. And in the marketing and communications work stream, this implementation is happening primarily in the marketing areas, where significant amounts of digital, creative services, account management, and measurement and analytics work is underway. It's important to note for this presentation that peak is likely not to have expected structural or resource impacts to the public relations and internal communications teams. That said, we certainly embrace the peak principles you see here and work every day to live those out. As we've highlighted this morning, the university's PR and internal communication structures are in place for a variety of good reasons. And in most cases, these work models allow teams to do strategic and great work, both individually and together. But as is the case in any large, diverse, and complicated organization, this distributed model can introduce some challenges for the professionals who work hard to contribute to the university's mission. And you see those challenges here. So where does this leave our teams in terms of opportunities for the future? Well, I would advocate we take 4 key steps in particular in the near term to enhance our efforts. First, we need to continue to invest in the people, skills, and processes essential to our mission. For example, consider additional resources for issues in crisis management at a system level, or even model the central Duluth team after the university relations structure and peak principles. Second, we need to continue to optimize our operations and set clear expectations to communicate the highest priorities and risks of the university. Third, continue to enhance our visibility to support all of the campuses and reflect our system diversity. And finally, continue to work to use measurement and analytics to maximize our successes, but also stop or adjust our approaches if things aren't working well. So with that, I'd turn it back to you, Chair Gully, for conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Tombarge. Regents, let's turn to discussion. Are there any questions or comments? Regent Davenport.
Thank you. You answered my question on that slide 32 in that top square, investing in people. And maybe you can elaborate just a little bit on, because you have such a highly professional team, and thank you, that's an excellent presentation and really helpful in understanding. Because of the decentralized nature and the centralized management of some messaging, how do you do that first bullet, the invest in people skills and processes essential? The media communication is something most administrators don't go to school for. And so, and not just administrators, but, you know, unless you're in journalism or maybe at the Humphrey School, do we utilize expertise in those areas to help build out the skills of people that are need that development and want that development?
Thank you, Chair Gully and Regent Davenport. It's a great question and a great suggestion, actually. We have not explored partnerships with colleges, for example, to do this work, but I think it's definitely something we should look into. Certainly our own team, in addition to making sure that our team has the right experience, the right professional backgrounds, the right relationships with media, both that they can bring to the team but build while we're there, are very important. We actually do work in a pretty centralized model in terms of managing most mainstream media. And so relationships with certainly Twin Cities media, a number of larger greater Minnesota media, we consider our responsibility and we invest in those relationships regularly on behalf of the entire system. In addition to our own staffing, which as a central unit is always a little challenging, of course, with resources, we try to tap Marcom leaders across the institution and certainly on our other campuses. And so we spend a lot of time connecting that group, making sure that we are connected, making sure that we're having open conversations. We learn from each other all the time, so we're sharing those experiences that we have. But then we have some very concentrated efforts that our team invests in as well. We do a lot of media training. I think many of you have experienced parts of that media training. We do that outreach for faculty. We do that outreach for leaders and deans across the institution. And we do that proactively. So we will, communicators know that they can invite us to a department meeting and hold a session on media. But we certainly are doing a form of that training and counsel when there's an issue at hand as well in the moment. And so we're trying to focus that way. The final example I'd give perhaps is in the issues and crisis management space. Sometimes emergencies or issues can exceed the capabilities of our small but mighty team. And so we have developed a group of communicators across the system who have volunteered and stepped up and said, if the university is facing a major crisis and you need more communicators to jump into the fold, we'll do that with you. And so that's a group that our office keeps in touch with, and we actually have several trainings and engagements throughout the year to make sure that they are also equipped to respond to emergencies. So those are just a few examples.
Those are good, solid examples. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Tom Barge, thanks for the presentation. My question was about, we talked about centralized, decentralized, and I think as you recognize, there's places where both make sense, right? And I think part of that is because the audience isn't central. We're not, there are those key things you talked about, okay, system level pandemic messaging where we need to get this out to everyone. But once we talk about different campuses or even within, down to a department level, very specific, we're not all trying to reach the same audience. How do we go about that and kind of like channeling things to the right places? Also, especially in the different ways people kind of consume media and whatnot. So we had examples of getting stuff on the news. The whole country's not really in front of the 9 o'clock news anymore, like maybe once was true. So how does that shift happen, and then how's that supported by the structure, right, to then match the change in consumption, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Some of this we'll actually address in the next presentation.
Yeah, okay.
Regent Kenyanya, thank you for the question, though. So you'll get to see some of those best practices that we employ to make some of that happen. But you're right, it is a challenge. There's a lot of internal relationship that we spend time building, and a lot of internal communication that happens even for the PR team. And so, for example, issues like the presidential search, certainly very centrally managed between the board office team and our team in terms of making announcements, publicizing the engagement opportunities. We certainly will be asking communications leaders across the system, particularly on the other campuses, to amplify those opportunities so that the community knows how to engage in multiple ways. All of our teams are certainly doing this in traditional news media, but also recognizing that traditional news media readership is changed, and it continues to change. And so we certainly are working closely with our social media teams, for example. My team meets regularly, weekly, with the social media team in university relations, which is part of the marketing team. But they're having discussions all the time about how can we amplify a positive story. But also that team is often the first to signal to us that there could be trouble bubbling up among various stakeholder groups. So that back and forth and really the kind of complementing each other's work, but also helping watch out for each other is key. There really aren't enough of us, and frankly, in any circumstance, there couldn't be enough of us to keep track of everything. The goal here is to try to make sure that we are sharing with each other the information we need to act on before it kind of gets away from us. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Mr. Tombarge. Regents, our next presentation is also with Mr. Tombarge.
You get to listen to me a lot today.
This is our third and final item, and it's an overview of best practices in public relations and internal communications at public universities, or our public university.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gully, and thanks for your attention. This final presentation this morning will help illustrate the best practices that we use in higher education public relations and internal communications. And while many of these best practices are common across industries, some are particularly important for a public university like ours. Our public setting, our reputation in the state mean we sometimes operate under a different set of rules and expectations than other organizations. So how does who we are affect the way we communicate? Well, in Minnesota, we are incredibly fortunate to have countless residents who are passionate about the university. And in most cases, they become our biggest supporters and advocates. It also means they expect a lot from us, and sometimes that can be a challenge when we don't meet those expectations. Oftentimes, that passion is based on individual experiences with a university. Campuses and other locations have distinct cultures and settings that build strong connections. Land-grant universities are often expansive organizations and can be difficult to understand or navigate. Social media, as we touched on in the last answer, has had a life-changing impact on our work, both good and sometimes hard to manage. For a public university, data laws and public expectations of transparency sometimes dictate what we can and can't say, and sometimes even conflict with each other. And national and local conversations about the values we work to live out in higher education can very much affect the way we communicate. So what do we take away from that? Well, at the University of Minnesota, we think of ourselves in all of the unique ways, right? 5 distinct campuses, 17 colleges, more than 26,000 employees serving more than 68,000 students a year. But the public often thinks of us as the University of Minnesota, period. We are a single organization. Why is this important? Well, we draw distinctions between our campuses, colleges, and units for very good reasons. For example, when you're recruiting a student to the particular culture, benefits, and attributes of the Morris and Duluth campus. Indeed, the integrity of the Driven to Discover brand and the U of M's value to Minnesota is the sum of our campuses and parts. But when we're managing the university's reputation, especially in a negative situation, the public and news headlines focus on the university as a whole. So a localized issue or story can quickly become a university issue or story, sometimes benefiting all of us, but other times diminishing our brand or reputation. The lesson here is we all need to invest in the university's reputation together. And through a number of examples in the coming slides, we'll take a closer look at some of the best practices at the U of M and other universities that help us do that. Let's start with internal communications. When COVID-19 cases began to surface at university campuses across the country, we all held our breaths hoping that our campuses wouldn't be next. Teams quickly started planning for the potential of a crisis, and at the U of M, we actually had a fair amount of practice in this area and a great deal of planning in place. We are so lucky to have partnerships with the university's Health Emergency Response Office, or HERO, our Department of Emergency Management, and others who serve the entire system. Like the rest of the world, higher education realized COVID wasn't going to be temporary or limited in its crisis. It required a new and extended level of internal and external communication, and it couldn't be accomplished through business as usual. But the best practices we already knew about internal communications were a great guide. First, know your audience. A student living on campus in the middle of COVID is very concerned about different things than a grounds worker who maybe can work independently, or a professor or research lab worker who works closely with others. We needed to deliver the information they needed. Navigating COVID required detailed university policies that were communicated, hopefully clearly, and we needed to provide information that was framed in ways that spoke to individual audiences, helping them understand the steps they could take to stay safe. Cascading information from the top down into the university community allowed us to ensure that the university's most trusted messengers, those managers and supervisors that employees trust the most, were part of the plan. We used a lot of channels of communication, from chancellor emails, posters, communication about the research, and Zoom town hall meetings. And through it all, we aim to be consistent, constant, and empathetic. Best practices like these aren't only important, though, during a pandemic, and they are critical anytime any of our teams communicate with students, faculty, and staff. So our internal communications team has developed a number of tools that help others help themselves. We have a statement library. We load statements that the university has made in the past about issues so that we have a reference point the next time that topic may surface. We have a university relations blog that both our marketing, PR, and internal communications teams contribute to help develop skills and share best practices. And we've even developed some tools that help guide leaders and communicators across the institution in sometimes very challenging situations. This next section looks at public relations. And most, but not certainly all, of our work is done in the media and in other places, of course. Here you can see 4 headlines that help illustrate what's possible when we utilize the best practices you see here. First, relationships are key. Again, with media and internally to maximize the use of experts and expertise. Particularly when it comes to announcing new research or responding to a reporter's request for a same-day request, being first is critical to landing the story. As a public university, embracing transparency is important. We have to anticipate the questions and prepare. So for example, in the lower left, you see the story about our new chemistry building construction project. That required a lot of preparation and making sure that the speakers involved were clear about the message, were comfortable answering questions, and could anticipate the sorts of things they may be asked. In addition, we often need to be nimble, and sometimes, frankly, we need to connect the dots for others. Dean Laura Molgard in the lower right corner has done a tremendous job over the last couple of months doing media relations, talking about the veterinarian shortage in Minnesota and the US. And she's actually kind of become the de facto expert voice in our region because together we recognized that opportunity, developed a narrative that brought the story together, and helped reporters connect the dots. The PR team certainly uses tools of its own. Some of them are very directed to media themselves based on reporters' interests, but also the way they like to receive information. So for example, Talking with U of M is a format that allows a faculty member to do kind of a Q&A format of writing. And we actually developed that specifically to be reprinted verbatim by Greater Minnesota Media. They are short on content, short on staff, and we often find that they publish those as expert Q&As. Research briefs highlight research as it's published, a very timely announcement. And expert alerts highlight our experts on high-profile topics. We've actually found that reporters will save those expert alerts, sometimes for months or longer, and call us back when the issue comes across their desk and they need to report on it. We also offer a number of tools and services, some of this addressing Regent Davenport's question earlier, to help the university community prepare and be better storytellers. Many of us that do internal and communications or PR work are also called on the university to manage issues in crisis communications. And in university relations, we actually look to the research to help guide us on how to do this well. Among the country's leading researchers in this area are Herman Dutch-Leonard and Arnold Howitt at the Harvard Kennedy School. And they've researched organizations over a number of years, including in higher ed, to determine how organizations respond to issues and crises and what makes those responses successful. Based on that research, they have developed what you see here, the issue spectrum, which helps us differentiate an issue from a crisis. Events on the left side of the spectrum may affect an organization's reputation and may actually be quite serious. But Leonard and Howitt call them routine because they are highly predictable. We can plan for them in a number of ways. An example might be a fire. If a fire breaks out, we all know what to do. We call 911. The well-trained fire department comes, they put out the fire, they escalate it accordingly, and chances are they'll get the fire put out and hopefully minimize injuries. Again, it's all very practiced. It happens almost by template. But as you move to the right side of the issue spectrum, you encounter true crises or catastrophes. And these are things that will significantly damage reputations and in some cases end the tenure of leaders. These are situations that are highly unpredictable. They require clear processes and decision-making roles. They require nimble and adaptive leadership. And we can rarely predict them through scenario planning. In the middle, you see a reference to novelty. And is the situation novel? Novel is an incredibly important question for us to ask when we're in the middle of something. In other words, is there a lot of risk? Is there high uncertainty? Is it rapidly evolving? Will it diminish our usual capacity? Is it unprecedented or highly complex? Why are these important questions to ask? Because according to the research, the presence of novelty dictates what type of preparation and response approaches will be most successful. As you can see here, the goal in managing a routine issue is a rapid, efficient, and successful response. Again, in a fire, you want to get there as fast as you can. But in a novel crisis, which is likely to evolve rapidly, you're just aiming to do the best you can in the moment. You're trying to move yourself to the next decision point and the next communication. And through that series of decisions, come out with a better result. Preparing for routine issues is about planning, practicing, and building working relationships. But preparing for novel crisis requires us to focus on capabilities, roles, how will we make decisions together in the moment, and preparing for the unexpected. So novel crises could be anything from the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, when none of us really had any idea what direction that was going, to an ongoing violent event. It's also important in managing crises and issues to consider the potential story arc. The concept of the story arc is something we learned in English class. There's a rising action and eventually a return to normal. And many times when we're communicating about an issue or crisis, our goal is to lessen the story's climax and shorten the distance between the originating event and the return to normal. Some of what impacts that arc are factors we may have limited control over, and those are represented on the left under the title Raising the Temperature. Meanwhile, as the situation plays out, communications and our leaders are probably doing a number of the actions you see next to the green arrow, from gathering facts, taking action, to practicing adaptive leadership. It's also important, however, to lower the temperature in these instances. And lucky for us, these are often actions that we can control. Things like communicating transparently, engaging with our audiences, making sure we are taking action. So how do these considerations play out in real life? Well, let's look first at a situation involving an on-campus chemical spill. Last June, a University of Akron student was taken to the hospital following a chemical spill. And according to TV news, a student was working in the lab, dropped a bottle containing the chemical, and as the bottle broke, the chemical splashed on the student's pants. The student was transported to the hospital out of precaution. The building and an adjacent building were closed until the situation was investigated, and the lab itself remained closed until the spill was cleaned up. First, through the lens of the Harvard research, this situation would be considered a routine issue. In other words, it's pretty predictable. We have a good idea of what can and is likely to happen. And in fact, at the University of Minnesota's 5 campuses, this is actually a very likely and pretty regular occurrence. Whether you're talking about a science lab, a medical lab, or even an arts lab. When managing an issue like this, it's important to focus first on the university's values. And certainly in the case of Akron, as would be ours, safety is the top value we're working to communicate and act upon. But at Akron, they also recognized that escalation was necessary, evacuating not just the building affected, but a nearby building, and communicating those in transparent ways. Their approach would have been consistent with well-practiced training, giving each person clear roles. Each responder, from firefighters and emergency personnel to the university spokesperson, knew what to do and responded accordingly. Any internal communication about this event, such as building evacuations, ultimately became external communications. And if we're prepared and practice these types of responses, we can position ourselves for a similar outcome, minor or no injuries. Above all, one thing is most important in navigating routine issues: build relationships, trust, and plans before the issue even arises. Let's consider next a novel situation that occurred on our own Twin Cities campus. On August 2nd, 2022, emergency responders evacuated multiple U of M arenas and buildings following a sewer explosion and petroleum leak. It all started when Minneapolis Fire attended to a fire in the basement of a fraternity house on University Avenue around 3 o'clock. They found heavy smoke and flames coming from the basement and successfully put it out. But outside, reports of an explosion in the sewer that blew off manhole covers nearly across an 8-block span of University Avenue, and the smell of gas from the sewers was very strong. The incident led to multiple evacuations of our facilities, including the local YMCA and a nearby daycare evacuated to Bierman Field, and multiple emergency response agencies and their public information officers, including our own UMPD and public relations team, responded. For much of that evening, these agencies and the university succeeded in our shared priority, keeping people safe, using the best practices you see on the screen. We maintain strong relationships before a crisis, and then in the crisis, focus on following clear processes and procedures we've already agreed to. Who could have anticipated what the August 2nd how it would have played out? It was impossible because it was a truly novel situation, according to Leonard's and Howitt's definition. So we worked together to make a long series of decisions to be as effective as each moment in the situation allowed. Public information officers on the scene quickly determined that the university's PR team would lead communications early in the response, and of course, directly to our campus community. We established social media feeds as the trustworthy source of information, and then provided almost hourly communication people could rely on. We also supported Minneapolis Fire public information officers during a late afternoon media briefing. Above all else, we were focused on keeping our community safe. In the end, evacuees got to go home before bedtime, and there were no injuries reported. So as we look to all of these best practices we've discussed this morning, our team in university relations will continue to partner closely with all of our campus and university partners to continue to build our capacity in good times and in challenging ones. And we'll do that in the ways you see here, continuing to enhance issues in crisis management, capacity and training, conducting additional system outreach to improve all of our ability to identify potential issues, continue to focus on those relationships and coordination internally and externally, and also staying connected to our colleagues nationally through AAU, Association of Public and Land Grant Universities, and the Big Ten, so that we can continue to learn from them and then from us. So with that, Chair Gully, I will turn it back to the special committee for discussion.
Thank you. Regents, any comments or questions? Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Gully. That was excellent.
Thank you.
That just was really excellent. I'm always impressed by the internal, external communications that I receive. A question I would have is, and I can't remember exactly what they're called, but we get the news roundup.
Yes.
Does that go to legislators, or could someone sign up to get that? It's so well done, and it's so reflective of the work that the university system does, that I've always wondered how many are in that email blast, and who gets that, and it's just so well done.
Thank you, Chair Gully and Regent Davenport. That is, it's called Today's News. It arrives pretty much Monday through Friday every morning, hopefully by mid-morning. It is not an exhaustive list of news coverage about the university. That would take us too long, frankly, to build. There's so much happening at the university system across the state. But we do compile that every morning in the hopes that we are providing kind of a snapshot, a very broad snapshot of the ways that the university is showing up in the media. Most of those stories are positive, but not all. We really aim to kind of show the reality of the situation in the news media. Anyone can sign up for that. And so we automatically populate that email for university leaders, certainly members of the board and others, because we want our leadership being aware of what's out there. But any member of the university community or public can sign up to receive those by contacting our office. And we've collected many along the way. So that list, I don't have an exact amount, but it is multiple thousands of people. Many of those stories are certainly taken by the government relations team and amplified directly with legislators as well. So while all of them may not receive this email, they certainly are getting some of the content.
Other questions or comments?
Maybe not a question, Madam Chair. It was maybe some months ago, we talked just offline about how there's these platforms, and I was actually just showing the president just earlier this morning that allow other people to take that messaging, that content, and then deploy it. I mean, obviously, you could take a story and post it. We can already do that, but there's platforms that some companies are using to, especially, I mean, I'm not even thinking on the operational day-to-day event stuff. I'm thinking the research and outreach and really special stuff that people are doing. And we all, as members of the community, whether you're faculty, students, staff, or just a community member, you have an area of interest. Sustainability, water, arts, and could kind of have that fed to you and kind of amplify that message, because that's what you want to naturally do anyway. So not a question there, but I think there's an opportunity to just continue to equip our community to kind of amplify that message, especially because I mean, a lot of our conversations, whether it's really on a lot of fronts, what we usually end up saying is people don't know the stuff we're doing. We don't fully know I was just talking with the interim president. We hear stuff all the time, especially as leaders. People will come up to you like, wow, I heard about you guys, how you guys are doing. I'm like, are we now? That sounds really cool. Please send me that link. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there. Yeah.
It's a great point, Regent Kenyayo. Thank you, Chair Gully. The problem, if it's a problem, is by virtue of our own success as a university, I think. There is so much happening here. It is impossible to keep track of. And in some ways, even in my own career, I started as a print journalist and have been doing PR a long time. I've never worked for an organization like this that actually has more content than you could possibly dream of, that is positive and is worth amplifying. And so sometimes the hardest part, even for the communicators, is to prioritize and figure out where to spend our limited time. But there's a lot out there, both that we are amplifying ourselves, but that happens on its own, frankly. And so very challenging to keep track of that. Love the idea of a platform and finding ways to help people be the amplification for us. People trust their networks more than they trust anyone, whether it's friendships, family members, other relationships. If people know each other, they trust each other. And so if we can help them carry the university's message for us, all the better.
Madam Chair, briefly, I mean, I think that trust point, that's a presentation you gave us, I want to say early fall, about, public opinion on who they trust and sources and whatnot. And so I'm remembering that, and yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, if there's nothing else, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.